Hello, hello, hello. We are going to talk about reading activities, but I specifically wanted to group reading activities that kind of have a listening component together. So, word cloud. I think this is something that I first read about on Martina Bex's blog. That seems like a pretty safe bet. I'm not 100% positive. I do know for sure that the story that I used in the example below is from Spanish Cuentos, and it's from his book El Ratón Pablito. It's a super fun book with lots of little short stories in it. And basically what you do is you start by creating the word cloud, and there's tons of free word cloud generators online, and you print them off, and then you read the story out loud. And as they're listening to you read the story, they highlight the words that they hear. Some variations as well. You could change it up by adding words that aren't in the story. So maybe your word cloud has a few distractors in it. I probably wouldn't do a ton. They're very similar, so they would have to be listening carefully. So maybe the difference between TNA and TNAs, and make sure that they're hearing what's the difference. Another good way to change it up is to use a recording instead of reading it out loud. So the example that I used is from that Spanish Cuentos book. One of the things that I love about it is he has quite a few videos on his YouTube channel that are these cute little animated shorts where he reads and tells the story. They are a fantastic, first of all, it's an amazing book. Second of all, his YouTube channel, amazing resource. I'm gonna have to tag him in the description. He's got an Instagram account as well that's fantastic. But it's a really handy resource for if you're doing this as a rereading activity. You can just play the story, and as they're listening to it, I love giving them a chance to hear somebody that's not me speak. So that's a good option for them. And I know, of course, we don't always have these other reading options or recording options of our text, but if you do, this is a really good option for that. I wanted to talk about a little bit of a follow-up activity. So once you've done the reading and the highlighting, a third way, the next thing you can do, so they listened and highlighted, then you can give them a printed copy of the reading, and they're going to take the words that they have highlighted and they're going to go find them in the reading. You could even have them do some sort of coding activity as they're doing that. So they're going to look at the highlighted words that they have, and maybe they're going to use purple for an action word and green for if they it was a name. Just another way for them to interact with the words and the text, and they're digging through. Another follow-up activity, this is something that I wouldn't do early on with your novices, but maybe if they've been using these are your high frequency verbs that are in this story, and they've been using them a lot and encountering them a lot, and maybe they're ready for this, give them their word cloud with highlighted words and say, okay, choose 5, and you have the rest of the class period to try and write your own story using those 5 words somewhere in your story. And some of them will just choose the names. Some of them will use the words that S. They're super familiar with that word, super common. Awesome. They just get to choose, but it's a good way to give them choice, flexibility, and allowing them to play with the language in a way that's different. And then you can have them trade their stories or look at each other's. It's just kind of a fun follow-up. Partner Matamoscas. And I know a lot of people like to do this as a whole class activity or a big group activity where you project the board on the screen and their kids race and slap the screen or whatever. It's a really nice way to involve your whole class if you just make the board on a piece of paper and you just play it with partners or small groups. It has to be a small enough group that everybody can actually reach. First, step 1, make your board. And the example that I have below is from my cognates unit, which is why you kind of see this mix of you're why are there English words on there? Because sometimes I call the word in Spanish and I have to find the word in English. So you either make the board and it's just a bunch of words scattered, or you could even have students make the board by telling them what words to put on there and just having them randomly place them on there. The trick about having students make the board is that if you're having them write, they need to write legibly, so you just make a big deal about that. And once your board is all set, and it maybe looks something like what I have pictured below, you're going to put the board in between the 2 students or your group of 4, and you are going to either read the story or just read chunks, or there's lots of options for this one. Or you could read, if you wanted to say the word in English, they could find the Spanish word. If you wanted to say the Spanish word, they could find the English word. Lots and lots of options for you for this one. I really like to do, I'll read a chunk of the language, so I won't be reading the whole story, but I might pull out a sentence, and then they could, they'll find the word. So you read, or you say the sentence or the phrase, they're listening, and if they hear one of the words on the board, they're racing to be the first person to touch it. Or if you want to, you can use, I know some people like to use markers and they have to use their color to mark the board. I prefer to just have the students be the first one to touch it because I like to reuse my boards between class periods. Sheet protectors and expo markers. Yes, of course. If you have sheet protectors, that's a fantastic way to do this without having to do a lot of copies. Markers do help make it really easy to see who was there first. The first time I tried this, I did this in middle school. I had students coloring on each other and, you know, I just chose to avoid that classroom management thing also. And then when I would use this with my students, we would keep track of points. And here's my favorite point system for this. If you are the first person to touch it, you get a point. If you and your partner cannot agree on who was the first person to touch it, Profe gets the point. So when they set up their scoreboard, they have a column for partner 1, a column for partner 2, and a column for me. And then it's such an easy way, so that way they're not like, if they're like, no, I was there, and then I just go Profe's point, and then we keep going. Variations. Okay, so variation 1, have students create the game board. If you are not familiar with her, if you don't know her, you need to go check her out, La Maestra Loca. First of all, her Instagram is fantastic, but her YouTube channel and her blog, full of great resources. She has a post on just Matamoscas, I don't remember if it was on Partner or not, where she talks about she has students create the game board. That's a really nice option. You can also use chunks of language instead of individual words. So if you remember, like just a few seconds ago, the example of the board was individual words. You could do like longer chunks or longer phrases, so they're having to look and read a little bit. The only thing that I would kind of caution you with that about, you know, your students, right? So some students who might have IEPs, or even maybe they don't even have an IEP, maybe something like this where they're racing and there's this pressure on them to read and process quickly, that can be really stressful. So not all students love that. So like I said, you know your students, and find a way that works for you and works for them. So let's just talk about this first. It's called reverse running dictation. And we were just talking about, okay, so this is also from La Maestra Loca, but I just kind of wanted to, this is my site, my sources down here below. This is where I first heard of this, but I'm pretty sure from looking at the hashtags that she learned about this from La Maestra Loca. So just trying to make sure you know where these ideas are coming from and that you can go learn more about them from all of these other sources too, because there's lots of wonderful resources out there for us to connect with. So let's start with running dictation, right? Because this is called reverse running dictation. So if you're not familiar with running dictation, I want to give you just a quick overview. Basically what happens with running dictation is you have a pair of students, often, or maybe a small group, and one person is the writer and one person is the runner, and the runner will run out to a hallway or maybe a common space where you have hung sentences from your reading up, and they're going to go read the sentences and like memorize them, or at least like try and remember them, and they're going to run back to their partner and they're going to repeat the sentence to their partner, and their partner is going to write it down. Okay, that's running dictation. Okay, reverse running dictation is this feels silly to say, reverse. You're flipping it. So instead of the sentences being hung up on the wall, what you're going to do is you are going to create the sentences. Okay, so reverse running dictation is you are flipping running dictation. So here's what you do. You need to do this with some sort of image. So either one, print pictures. So if you were doing this like with like a movie talk or a clip chat, or Senior Wooly is a really great resource for this because he includes stills from all of his videos in his resources. But another good option would just be to say, okay, students, you know, we're going to illustrate the story and maybe make that like a previous day's lesson plan. So, you know, you give them a few sentences to illustrate on like you would want them to use like a whole sheet of computer paper, and then pick like your 10 best illustrations. Step 1, you're getting your images. Step 2, you're going to write sentences to describe each of those images. And if you had your students do it, chances are you already had your sentences written out because you gave the sentences to students for them to draw. But if you were doing this with like a movie from YouTube that we were clip chatting, or a Senior Wooly video, you're going to want to write a sentence that goes with each of the pictures. Then you're going to split up the sentences into like halves. would use this in my classroom, I did about 10 sentences and 10 pictures. However, I did that probably about a week into using the clip chat, using the video that we'd been talking about, and my kids were so fast. Like I thought I was gonna use this activity for like the whole class period, and I just had kind of like a just in case sort of sponge activity, because I was so glad I had a backup activity because they knew that language and they knew that story so well that they were listening and they find the picture. Then they come back, they listen, they find the picture. And like usually with running dictation, they listen to it and then they go read it and they come back, and like there's a couple of trips involved. When I did this at that stage of the story, so my students had been using it for a few days, they needed no repeating at all. They were so fast. So my advice to you is, if you are going to try reverse running dictation and it's been like you've been using that story for a little while, or it's language that they're pretty comfortable in, give them a whole bunch. Give them I would say even 20. They do 10 and 10 easy, maybe even 15 and 15, especially if it's something they're really, really confident with. However, if it is a new story, maybe this is something you're doing to almost as like a pre-reading activity where they're going to try and predict what's coming, then I would probably stick with less. So maybe you have 10 sentences. Student A's sheet is going to get 5, and student B's sheet is going to get 5 sentences. So 5 sentences and 5 sentences. All right, student A has their piece of paper with their 5 sentences on it. Student B does not have a piece of paper yet, okay? Student A, hi Susan. Student A is going to read one of the sentences. And remember, our sentences describe our pictures. So they're going to read the sentence out loud to their partner. And when I set this up for students, I made sure to make it very, very clear that they know that this is a listening activity that involves the reading, but it is not a reading activity for your partner. Okay, it's a reading activity for you and a listening activity for your partner. So you want to make it really clear to your students that they should not be showing the sheet to their partner. Student A, reading their sentence out loud, but not showing it to their partner, just reading it. Student B is listening. And then they're going to go look at the drawings, look at the scenes, look at those pictures that we prepped ahead of time. And they're going to go find the picture that matches whatever the sentence was. I label my pictures with letters. So, picture A, picture B, picture C, whatever. And they're going to say, oh, picture B, there's a really big elephant. So they're going to come back to partner A, and they're going to say, okay, partner A, your first sentence that you read me is picture A. Student A is going to read them the next sentence, which again is somewhere hung up and around the room. So once student A gets through all of their sentences, I had them turn in their sheet, and then partner B picked up their sheet, because I wanted them to do all of them at a time, and then the other student all at a time. Student A is going to read all their sentences, and B is going to go find them all, and then student A turns in their sheet, student B picks up their sheet, and these are the other 5 sentences. So then their roles switch. So B is reading, and A is going to go run and find the pictures that match. I have blog posts on all of these activities that I have talked about, and I have some resources to support you with these. If you have any questions about things, you can just drop a comment, and I will make sure to put clickable links to the blog posts that I have on these activities. So yay! All right, well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope it's wonderful, beautiful weather, and that you are having a restful summer. All right, bye.